Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Marissa Kozlov, and I'm so happy you've joined us for today's eMarketer Tech Talk webinar, where we host guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. Today, we are going to learn how to get the most out of your mobile ad budget by driving genuine engagement and improving measurement. So before we get to all of that great content, I would like to introduce you to my special guest, Matt Sutton, Global Chief Revenue Officer at TrafficGuard.
Hey there. Thank you. It's great to be here.
I also want to remind all of you that this is your opportunity to learn. So if you have questions for Matt, just use the chat window on the right at any time to submit questions during the Q&A. I will do my best to get to as many as I can, so please keep them coming. All right, Matt, it is time to get started. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you very much. So first off, thanks everybody for joining us today. As I think you know, we're going to spend about 20 to 30 minutes in this session. So I'm going to try to make it as interesting as possible, as engaging as possible, but also at the same time, hit all the right notes so that within that 20 to 30 minutes, everybody walks away with a clearer idea on the opportunity of detecting and preventing ad fraud in your mobile app user acquisition strategy. So with that said, here we go. So I thought I would start the session by first going macro and giving you a big picture look at the global scale and impact of invalid traffic and ad fraud on the world today. And the reason I do that is to sort of set the context and give you an idea of the size of the problem. And the numbers are absolutely crazy. So let's go from the top. So if you look at the size of the digital advertising market today, in other words, the amount of money that's spent on digital advertising, digital ad slots every single year, that number is a huge $455 billion. So in other words, every single year, advertisers spend $500 billion on digital advertising. And it's kind of crazy to think that if you go and speak to the likes of Adobe, they will tell you that 28%, so in other words, one third of that $500 billion never actually reaches real humans and real users, but is in fact clicked on by bots. So one third of ads every single year in terms of dollar numbers are clicked on by bots. So let's dig underneath that a little bit more. If you go and speak to Nielsen, they'll tell you that the average return for every dollar spent on advertising is 2.87. So in other words, for every dollar spent, your ROI as an advertiser is $3. Now, some of you on the call might be thinking, "Whoa, that's really high. I wish I was getting that." Or some of you might be thinking, "Well, we don't even get that. I wish we could get up to that." But that's the average that Nielsen will tell you. So that $127 billion that's clicked on by bots actually backs out to $364 billion of lost revenue because of fraud every single year. If you go even further to that, and you think about the fact that the market values revenue versus market value, in other words, the market cap and the valuation of a company at about 1 to 10. So in other words, for every dollar of revenue you get, your company is worth 10x that. That's 1.8 to 3.6 trillion dollars of wealth, of value that's stolen from the world every single year just from ad fraud. It's kind of crazy. So here at TrafficGuard, we're extremely passionate at returning that value back to the world, that revenue back to those businesses, and those lost marketing dollars back to the marketing teams that sit inside those businesses. And that's what we do all day, every day, using our technology. To give you some of the data that we see on a day-to-day basis, I got our analyst team to look across the last 7 days of data from a subset of our advertisers. And what we'll tell you is that 30 to 40% of performance traffic going through to mobile apps is fraudulent. That results in about 20 to 40% of all installs being attributed to the wrong partner through attribution fraud, which then delivers misattribution, and 10 to 20% of post-conversion events are also invalid due to misattribution. The only way to prevent this happening is full funnel ad fraud technology. Wanted to go, before we get into the details and look underneath the hood at all those different kinds of ad fraud and how you can use technology to prevent it, I thought we should look at a definition of invalid traffic. And a good place to start is Google's own definition. So Google will tell you that invalid traffic is any activity that doesn't come from a real user with genuine interest. So a real user with genuine interest. And if you think back to that 3 in 10, those 1 in 3 ads which are actually clicked on by bots, they are not real users and they don't have genuine intent. And so that's the kind of ad fraud you want to take out of your marketing ecosystem. Looking a little bit further, there's 2 basic kinds of ad fraud that are in your advertising traffic. And most of the time, they are completely undetected. So on the one hand, we have general invalid traffic. And on the other hand, we have sophisticated invalid traffic. Now, as the word suggests, general invalid traffic is a little bit easier to find than sophisticated invalid traffic. So to break that down a little bit further, general invalid traffic is any invalid traffic that can be found through routine means of filtration. So basically parameter checks and rules that allow us to quickly identify that it's not real traffic. A good example of this would be a web crawler. So a web crawler will not come from a real user, have a device ID attached to it. Typically, it'll come from a known host or an enterprise server or a piece of malware. So routine checks with the right technology in place will find this for you. Sophisticated invalid traffic is a little bit harder to detect. And the way that it's detected is through advanced analytics and machine learning, which allows the technology to find the anomalous thing. So in other words, the thing that doesn't look like everything else, so it's suspicious, and that in turn reveals it to be invalid. A really good example of this would be bots that are designed to click on ads and then generate app installs. And the click to install time of these bots is similar to each other, but very different to all the human clicks and installs. So through machine learning and AI, you can find those suspicious click to install times. And once you've identified them, remove them from the attribution pool. When you're looking to detect and prevent fraud and invalid traffic, you need a technology that will allow you to both detect general invalid traffic and sophisticated invalid traffic, and then prevent it for you in real time. We've only got 30 minutes together, and there's so much ad fraud out there, which I've hopefully already showed you, that we could talk about this for hours. But I thought it would be useful to give you some quick and easy examples. So on the page here, you'll see just a little snapshot of all the horrible different kinds of ad fraud that TrafficGuard sees on a daily basis. Things like ad stacking, bots, cookie stuffing, click farms, domain spoofing, incentivized ads. There are so many different kinds of fraud and invalid traffic out there. And the brutal reality is they're mutating all day, every day. The fraudsters and the bad actors are always finding new ways to allow them to either get paid for a media engagement or to get wrongly attributed something so they get paid for it. As I mentioned, independent third-party fraud and invalid traffic tools are constantly looking for these things using general means of filtration and AI and machine learning, with this cat and mouse game of constantly looking for these things and adding them to their pool. So to sort of go over those numbers from a commercial reality again, there are 5 million apps available on the App Store today. And those apps spend up to $120 billion on app install campaigns, which means there is a huge opportunity for fraud. Wherever you will find an incentive to get paid for something that you don't deserve, that you didn't deliver, you will find attempts to defraud people and partners. So that $120 billion of activity on user acquisition campaigns across those 5 million apps represents a huge opportunity for ad fraud. Typically, that ad fraud is not found in the actual media engagement. It's in attempting to be attributed for an install or a user that either isn't real or is real but was not driven by them. And so a lot of the ad fraud in that mobile app user acquisition space is actually undetected. Here at TrafficGuard, we have a very specific solution for this, which is the TrafficGuard mobile app solution. With TrafficGuard's full funnel detection and prevention, we actually integrate directly at the click, then at the install and attribution level, and then on a post-attribution basis. We've won a lot of awards for this technology, and what it allows us to do is analyze that behavior from the click through to the install and then the post-install activity. We prevent those clicks from ever reaching the MMP in the first place. So we prevent that fraud from ever even reaching the mobile app in the first place, so that MMPs and mobile apps attribute only on clean data. And I wanted to give you an example of some of the threats that we see inside the TrafficGuard dashboard and the information that our clients and our advertisers have on the cleanliness or otherwise of their advertising traffic. So this is a screenshot from one of our advertiser accounts. Of course, we've redacted some of the information, but you'll see down the left here all the different kinds of threats within the traffic, within the advertising traffic for this mobile app. And you'll see that just in this little period of time, just in this little snapshot, there were 12 million invalid clicks generated from the networks for this partner. Now, all of those invalid clicks would have been undetected and would have reached the mobile app if it were not for TrafficGuard's click level prevention capability. So by investigating and verifying at the click and finding this bot traffic and this fraud at the click level, you can then have complete accurate data and make sure that those clicks are not getting into your attribution pool. So having the right level of data here is extremely important, not just at the click level, but down to the partner level. So you can see which invalid clicks are coming from which partner. And then beneath those partners, all the way down to the site ID level. Sometimes, for example, you'll find that invalid clicks are clustered around certain site IDs, but sometimes you'll find that these invalid clicks are distributed across lots of site IDs. Now, those site IDs might actually be generating valid traffic as well. So what you can't do is turn off all those traffic sources, because then you can't grow. What you need is full funnel detection and prevention right through that user journey, so that you know exactly where the invalid clicks are. So the invalid clicks are not reaching you, and only the valid clicks are reaching you. The right technology will enable you to do that. Thought I'd talk you through a couple of case studies whilst we're here on the call. So this is a very large, world famous fashion retailer that we work with here at TrafficGuard. And they were seeing some very suspicious activity. The clicks in their ecosystem had grown and grown over time. They were starting to see that their organic activity had stalled. They were starting to see that other paid sources, which used to be looking like they were performing very well, all of a sudden were not performing so well at all. So you've got huge growing numbers of clicks entering the system. You've got those clicks claiming attribution for lots of installs and events. You've got organic and other paid sources starting to look like they're not working so well. And then you start to realize, we're not really sure that we believe this data anymore. Within 2 weeks, TrafficGuard identified that their suspicions were correct. And close to 60% of those clicks were not real users. They were not coming from real humans, which was then delivering invalid installs, and more particularly, installs which were real, but which were being stolen and attributed wrongly to these fraudulent clicks. Now that TrafficGuard is in place with full funnel detection and prevention of those clicks reaching the mobile app in the first place, based on a CPI of 0.5, we estimate that we have saved this marketer $4 million a year that would have been wrongly attributed. Now, most importantly, those marketing dollars can now be reinvested into valid traffic and valid users to then grow. It's very important to remember also that if you have skewed data and if you have misattributed data at the install level, it goes all the way through to all the subsequent events. So sometimes marketeers might say to us, oh, we're paying on events. We don't care about installs. Or sometimes they'll say, we're paying on installs, we don't care about clicks. But the brutal reality is that those invalid clicks steal the attribution or generate an invalid install. And once the initial install is misattributed or invalid, all the subsequent events are linked back to that install. And so you have this snowball effect of misattribution and skewed data. And of course, you start optimizing into the misattribution and into the invalid events and into the invalid installs and into the invalid clicks. This is a quote that we're quite proud of. Fortunately, we get quite a lot of quotes like this from marketeers, but it just kind of shows you that a lot of the fraud and invalid traffic within the advertising ecosystem is undetected. So here at TrafficGuard, we are committed to full funnel transparency for all partners, MMPs, mobile apps, agencies, supply sources, and performance networks. As you saw at the beginning of this presentation, 1/3 of all advertising is clicked on by bots, and hundreds of millions of dollars a year are lost to ad fraud. And most of it is undetected. And often once we go in and we set up full funnel detection and prevention for mobile apps, the networks themselves will start to say, wow, I didn't realize that we were optimizing into some of this fraud, and I didn't realize we had this fraud within our own ecosystem. So we feel it's the responsibility of the advertiser to set up the right, if you're going to go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on user acquisition activity, then we would say put the right technology in place, get the right level of transparency, and enable your partners with that transparency. Take responsibility for that tracking. And often what you'll find is that a large amount of this invalid traffic is undetected. The numbers that I shared at the beginning of this presentation prove that to you. The existing ecosystem is riddled with fraud. And here at TrafficGuard, we're very passionate about exposing that and giving everybody the tools to remove it so that advertising performs better for everybody. So in summary, invalid traffic is a global problem, and it costs advertisers billions of dollars a year, and it's largely undetected. So if you think that you might have fraud, you're right. If you're sat here thinking, oh, we don't need this, we don't have any fraud, you're wrong. The only question is, how much fraud do you have? And what is the business opportunity for removing it? Without prevention in place, misattribution from your user acquisition program will continue to scale and grow. And you're literally optimizing on skewed data. And advertisers need to invest in having an independent third-party full funnel solution to make sure that they maximize the return on ad spend from their partners and from the user acquisition programs. So that's pretty much it from me. I hope that was useful, and happy to answer questions, of course.
Matt, thank you so much for that great content today. What a fantastic presentation. You shared so many fantastic insights with us. So let's get right to those questions. We have a number that have come in from our audience during your presentation today. The first question is, if this problem with ad fraud is so huge, why haven't I heard much about it? What do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you probably, heard in the last 20 minutes, me repeatedly using the phrase undetected. And so it is largely undetected. And the current ecosystem with the various measurement platforms within mobile app and the publishers themselves, and then just the sheer scale and complexity of the performance network space, and that spider's web, as I often describe it, of performance ad networks and sub-partners and site IDs, there is so much opportunity within that journey for fraudsters and bad actors to come in and get paid for something that they should not be getting paid for, because it's not a real user with genuine interest. And so, I think everybody is kind of aware of ad fraud and Google's, and I'm sure some of the numbers that I've shared today, people will be nodding their heads. Yeah, I know that that's out there, but I don't think that we have it, and that's where we kind of come in, and what we find with most of the advertisers that get started, we have some advertisers that come to us and go, I just don't trust my data. It seems crazy. And so then we come in and 9 times out of 10, fraud is the answer. And then we have other advertisers that say, no, I don't think I've had fraud. I'm pretty sure my numbers are clean. And 9 times out of 10, there is a level of ad fraud there as well. So the short answer is that the ad fraud problem is huge, but it's largely undetected, and not a lot of advertisers have yet got in place third-party independent full funnel technology, but that is starting to grow. And obviously here at TrafficGuard, we like to think that we're a big part of that solution. We've won a lot of awards for the technology that we have in play. A lot of the mobile apps that we work with are huge. We're very much enjoying and are very passionate about our journey, giving all mobile apps the opportunity to go and find this undetected problem.
Thank you, Matt. What indications or metrics should marketers look for to detect ad fraud?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, linked to the question that came just before, the first thing I think is to recognize that it's undetected. So if you're looking at a CPA number or a CPI number, so a cost per acquisition, or maybe a cost per install, or you're tracking to an event like a purchase or a sign up or a registration, which would be a CPE. Or indeed, if you're looking at your lifetime customer value of 3 months and 6 months and 12 months customer life cycle, it's very likely that you're looking at metrics with fraud already baked in. So in other words, all of those metrics could be 10% or 20% better if you immediately removed the fraud that's baked into that cost. Not to mention the fact that if you've been dealing with that problem for 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months already, you would have optimized further into clean traffic to unlock future growth that you haven't unlocked yet. And so, they're the things that marketers should be thinking about, that undetected, unlocked opportunity. And TrafficGuard, as I mentioned, will give advertisers and does give advertisers granular data all the way down to the individual click. Like this click at this time is fraudulent for this reason, from this site ID, from this subpartner, all the way through to the installs and events. And so once you have that technology, once you have that data, you take back the power, and then you start to prevent fraud and invalid traffic.
Matt, our next viewer asks, can ad fraud be completely eliminated? What are your thoughts?
Great question. So, the goal and the nirvana should always be to completely eliminate it from your advertising and from your metrics. I often describe it, and it's very much a cat and mouse game. Where the opportunity is there to get paid for something, there is always going to be bad actors. That's in every walk of life, right? Like banking, shops. There's criminality everywhere you go, and digital advertising is no different, right? So wherever there's an opportunity, you will always find bad actors. The right technology will enable you to be always on detecting and preventing for those things. And so it's never going to be eliminated from the world, but advertisers that have the right technology in place will always be protected for it. So think about it as taking out an insurance policy or having security cameras up around your house so that the bad actors are there. They're just not affecting you because you've put the measures in place and you're using clean data and you've taken that fraud out. They will, of course, go and focus on other advertisers and in other areas, and they're always going to be there. But with the right technology in place, you won't be affected by it.
How can I combat mobile ad fraud?
There's two main things that I always say in answer to that question, and it's culture and technology. And so if you have the right culture and if you have the right technology, then you will be able to combat ad fraud. So just to unpack those a little bit, the reason I say culture is because if you've been running a user acquisition program or a marketing team or a marketing program and managing marketing budgets, and you're relying on those numbers, and then somebody comes into the picture and says, wait a second, there's probably some undetected fraud here. Now you need to be in a culture and in a business that allows people to be honest and open enough to unpack that box, go and find this bad thing and remove it without feeling that they might somehow be told, well, why didn't you know about this before? Or what about those numbers from before? They're wrong. Or what about the lost marketing dollars that we already had? So having that right culture so that people feel brave enough and also are motivated to go and find this thing. It could be that if your KPIs are such that you're getting paid on the install, whether it's real or not, you don't care. You just want to get paid on the install and go home, and that's your KPI met. Then you don't have the right culture to even want to go and sort this out and go and find this thing and unlock this massive opportunity from detecting and preventing ad fraud. So culture is the first thing that I talk about, so that you have that from management, from leadership, all the way through the departments, right through the business, so that people don't walk away from it. People lean into it and they want to find it and unlock that opportunity. If you don't have the right culture, you'll just never get that opportunity. And being inquisitive and curious to understanding technology and data and how it's going to help, which brings me on to the second thing, which is technology. It's undetected. So without full funnel technology, you'll never be able to get to that thing. So having the right culture and openness, and then having that right culture to go and use the technology and lean into those numbers and learn about this are the two most important things on your journey to combating ad fraud and unlocking the opportunity.
We are going to take one more question today. What is the future of ad fraud, and what should I know for the new year?
Great question. So, the immediate future, because we're so early in the game of detecting and preventing it, the immediate future is for more and more advertisers to have complete clarity on their data and generate better performance from their user acquisition strategy because they have full funnel prevention. And so I see that over the course of the next 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months, we're more and more moving on that journey. And I think we'll get to a point where, most growth marketers and CMOs will always have full funnel independent third-party fraud and invalid technology in place. And when they move from one job to another or one app to another, they'll insist that that's a critical part of the toolkit. So I think the first thing is just independent third-party technology becoming table stakes as part of a user acquisition program. And the reason there's so much fraud out there and it's undetected is because we're quite early in that journey. And so I think that's a big part of it. And then from there comes things that we can do around incrementality measurement and addressable media and uplift from channels and all of those things that come from having full funnel prevention in place. And many of our advertisers are benefiting from incrementality science studies that we're doing with them together. So I would say like mass adoption and then incrementality and measurement is also coming out of that as well.
Matt, thank you so much for being with us today and for answering all of the questions from our audience, and of course for sharing all of that great content with us earlier. So before we wrap up, let me just take a moment to tell you what's happening across our media channels here at eMarketer. You can register for upcoming live analyst and also Tech Talk webinars at eMarketer.com/webinars. On the audio side, we have a great daily podcast called Behind the Numbers. I highly recommend taking a listen. And finally, please check out our newsletters. You can also keep an eye on your email for the link to today's playback. Thank you all for your time. And thanks again to Matt and the entire team at TrafficGuard. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk.